for him. Okay.
I'm ready to
Okay,
go.
Elliott. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So before I start talking about myself, I just want to clarify that you all in Archuleta County actually have two regent elections to vote for this year. You've got a CD3 seat that's open that's being vacated by Glenn Gallegos, who's an incumbent who's term limited. And there's a Democrat named Robert Logan who just entered the race. I believe he's from Durango. And so you'll be able to vote for that seat, and you get to vote for the at-large seat, which is the race that Charles and I are both vying for right now, which is, of course, statewide. There's also the CD5 seat open, but you don't get to vote for that one because that's in the Colorado Springs area. So anyway, I would thank you so much for having me. It's great to reconnect with the Archuleta Dems. And let me just take a few minutes to introduce myself and then talk about my priorities for if I'm elected to the Board of Regents. And I'd love to take your questions if there's time. So as Charles mentioned, the CU Board of Regents are the governing board of the entire university system. So that includes the CU Boulder campus, Denver, Colorado Springs, and the Anschutz Medical School. CU is the third largest employer in the state of Colorado, has an estimated $15 billion annual impact on our state's economy. So pretty massive enterprise and a very important enterprise as well. The CU Regents are in charge of that budget. We're the people that actually approve it. And in many ways, budgets are moral documents that show your priorities as people and as an institution. So the Regents are actually a pretty important body for deciding how the university spends its money. They're also in charge of overseeing the university administration, and they're also in charge of passing all policy and law that applies across the university system, from non-discrimination policy to joint governance to everything, student code of conduct, everything. So the Regents are actually a very important role. As Charles mentioned, this year we're going to have an outsized kind of role in the election because once every 12 years, it's like a comet cycle, I tell people, the CU at-large race is the only statewide race besides president, and 2024 happens to be one of those years. And as Charles also mentioned, this is the seat that's going to determine whether the Democrats maintain their majority on the Board of Regents. So it's a very important race. And if you're thinking about kind of talking points about why this race matters, I mean, those are two pretty big ones right there. So my background is, like Charles, I'm a CU Boulder grad, very proud CU Boulder grad. My first job out of college was as a school teacher. I was a public school teacher, union public school teacher in Las Vegas, Nevada. I taught 32 wonderful, very smart young kids of color, primarily in a very poor neighborhood in Las Vegas, Nevada. After I was a teacher, after several years, I became the development director for a large education nonprofit. And then I went to law school, and I'm an education attorney, and I represent public school districts across this great state, from very small districts on the Eastern Plains, Western Slope, to the largest metro area districts as well. As an attorney, I'm a litigator, so I go to court for our schools. I've stood up for anti-racism and gender inclusion policies. I've stood up for public health protocols during the pandemic, all things that shouldn't have to happen, but unfortunately, we need lawyers to fight those battles these days. And I have been honored to be on the front lines of those battles as well, fighting for our democratic values in court for our schools. In addition to being a lawyer, I also have served in leadership on several public boards. I'm currently the vice chair of a city commission in Boulder. I'm the past vice chair of a state commission on disability access. I'm also on the board of directors of a fabulous nonprofit here in Boulder that provides wraparound mental health and academic services to cohorts of kids growing up in poverty in our county. My big priorities for CU, if and when I'm elected, is number one, just like Charles was saying, we have got to keep CU an affordable and accessible institution so that all of our qualified scholars across the state can afford to go to CU. They get a great education when they're there, and they graduate with a degree without being shackled with debt for the rest of their lives. Number two, we have got to protect academic freedom so we don't end up like Florida and Texas and other states where academic freedom is under attack, where conservative politicians are starting to dictate what people can learn, getting rid of majors they don't like, banning equity programming that is so vital to inclusiveness on our campus. That is on the line in this election, and I'm going to be a very fierce proponent for protecting academic freedom at CU. Number three, we've got to get guns out of our classrooms. If you are, no matter how you feel about guns, if you're a pro-gun control, you're the most ardent Second Amendment defender, I think we can all agree there are certain places that guns don't belong. And in this country, there is a history and tradition of banning guns in classrooms. And we should do that at CU as well. We have a constitutional basis to do so. We have a state law basis to do so. The Regents just haven't made that choice yet. And if I'm elected to the Board of Regents, I'm going to be a voice for banning concealed carry, which is solely within the purview of the Regents at this point. And number four, I want to echo another point Charles made about sustainability. This is a critical issue that we need to tackle as a university system. We have got to reduce our climate footprint. We've got to conserve water. We've got to be better at protecting our environment. And this is an area where CU has really lost a step, unfortunately. We were one of the leading sustainability universities when independent organizations started ranking universities and tracking sustainability for universities. And now we have been bypassed by our peer institutions, including CSU, which pains me to say, but the Colorado State and other universities in Colorado have bypassed us big time and are now platinum qualified, where we're only gold. I want to be a platinum sustainability university again. And if I'm elected to the board, I'm going to push the university hard on that. And then finally, I want to say we have got to do more on diversity, equity, and inclusion, just like Charles was saying. And I want to echo a lot of the points he's saying, but one thing I'll add is, that's top of mind for me right now is I spent all afternoon with a group of folks in the Jewish community, of which I'm a member, talking about anti-Semitism that is pervading college campuses right now. And it is sickening to me. But we also have a role as a university to ensure that we're not only creating a safe and productive education environment, but we're also preserving people's rights to free speech. So this is an incredibly complex and important task that the CU Regents and our university need to be thinking about. And if I'm elected to the Board of Regents, as an attorney who practices constitutional law, I think I'm uniquely suited to help the university address this issue, ensure that we're preserving those interests on our campuses and making sure that everybody can thrive, regardless of who they are, their national origin, religion, and what have you. So I will also say I'm very proud to have the support of over 100 elected officials across the state of Colorado who've chosen to back my campaign, including Barb McLaughlin, who is your state representative, who is one of my earliest and most ardent supporters. And I'm just so thrilled with the support that we're seeing for our campaign. And as Charles said, this is top of the ticket next year, right behind president. So that means next year you folks have the opportunity to vote for Joe Biden, #1, and Elliott Hood, #2 on your ballot. I'll take your questions.
Okay, thank you, Elliott. So if you have questions, please raise your hand. Your virtual hand. Okay, well, I'll ask one since no one else is coming in. So what are the strategies to make the university more affordable for students? What can be done?
You bet. So this is one of those issues where as long as Tabor exists, there's no silver bullet to the tuition problem. And so we need to find creative solutions to make this university more affordable. So #1 is you got to tackle the biggest sources of costs for students. #1 is obviously tuition. We got to keep tuition in check. We got to make sure that if we're lifting tuition rates, that we are keeping it in line with historic rates of inflation, and that we are expanding access to financial aid programs for students who would not be able to come to college unless they had financial aid. That is hugely important to me. And then 2 is housing. Believe it or not, housing is the biggest driver of cost for our students. And we as a university need to make a firm commitment to making affordable, accessible housing options available for our students for their first and second year of college, which will dramatically reduce the debt load that our students take on. If you can tackle keeping tuition in check and providing housing options, you will make a dent in the cost of going to CU, which everybody should be able to do if they want to. It's an awesome place to go to school. And if we do those 2 things, we can make that happen. We can make a meaningful difference to reduce costs.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
I want to hear about Charles's Oppo research.
Not
Well,
so
I'll let you
fast, my
guys talk
friend.
about.
Not so fast.
Oh,
No, I also
I'll
want to
talk it.
echo. I mean, Charles and I have been on the campaign trail for months now, and we get along so well. It's a joy to actually be in the room with him and to have somebody running with me, not against me, but with me for this opportunity, who also just loves CU so much, is a real honor. So, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Elliot. I'm going to stop recording now, and I just want to say